Today, I would like to welcome all of you to my class on pharmacy practice, having a code of BP 703 under B Pharm curriculum of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Technical University, Lucknow. I am Dr. Avijit Majumdar, Director and Professor of Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology Pharmacy Institute, here amongst all of you to discuss the topic on drugstore management. Now, let me first give you a brief outline of what are the areas which we will be covering in our class today. We will be covering about the drugstore management, what are the factors which we consider whenever we are going for selection of our drugstore. We will be considering about what are the objectives of a layout of a drugstore. Say for example, we are purchasing an area, we are hiring an area, we are renting an area. What are the factors we should be considering whenever we are laying the objectives of the design of a drugstore. Next, we will be starting out the organization of a drugstore. That will be followed by the legal and other requirements which we have to meet up for a drugstore, and finally, at the end we will be giving you a brief outline of how to design a drugstore. Now, before we deal with the drugstore, let us first study what is the significance, what is the importance, what is the application of this particular topic which we are studying today. Drugs and medicines being very expensive, their resources are very limited. Therefore, it is very imperative and mandatory to improve their supply, increase their use and minimize their cost through an effective pharmaceutical management system which we need to put up in place. What do I mean by that? Basically, whenever we are designing a drugstore, we should see that it is a very effectively managing the space requirement, it is managing the requirements in terms of the stock availability, and it is having a very good process of drug dispensing. All these three activities which we are discussing now, they are all coming under the effective management of drugs and medicines. Therefore, drugstore management is therefore defined as a process which involves various functions like planning, organizing, coordinating and controlling activities of a drug house. Now, what do we mean by planning? Planning basically means we need to have a clear-cut plan about why are we interested to lay out or why are we wanting to set up a drugstore. Once the objective is clear, then we need to carry out the other functions like organizing, like coordinating and controlling a series of activities of a drug house for effective management. That is where we need to set up the drugstore, how to lay out a proper inventory management, so that at any point of time when a customer, when a patient is coming to your shop, he should not return back due to a stock out situation. Therefore, drugstore management basically it is a process which involves planning, organizing, coordinating and controlling activity of our drug house. So, the first and foremost important thing is we need to understand about what are the factors which are generally considered whenever we are selecting a drugstore. See, selection of drugstore means either you have to purchase an area, or you have to rent an area, or you have to go on for a lease agreement. Whatever the policy is, so the first important thing is you need to select a particular site for the drugstore which you are going to set up. This is very much important for your long run perspective, because a large number of pharmacy graduates, they want to become the entrepreneur, and whenever they are wanting to become the entrepreneur, they have a dream to set up the business on their own. And whenever they are wanting to set up a business on their own, this setting up of drugstore is of utmost priority before the business starts. Therefore, let us see what factors we generally consider while selecting a drugstore. So, the first important point is, what is the locality? What is the locality where a drugstore needs to be selected? It needs to be selected in those areas where the number of people visiting should be large. In other words, I should say that the drugstore must be located in an area where the population density is high. This is important because more is the population density, or higher is the population density, more will be the footfalls. That is, more and more number of people will be visiting your drugstore. That is the reason why we have to select it in an area where number of people visiting is more. The next point is the flow of traffic. We should avoid the setting up of a drugstore in an area which is near the traffic signal, because if it is near the traffic signal, the consumers, the patients who are traveling by their car or by their scooters or by their cycles, they may have a difficulty in parking them. That is the reason why we should avoid locations which are near to the traffic signals. At the same time, we should keep in mind that the connectivity must be very good. Connectivity means the people should be in a position to access your drugstore by various modes of transportation. So, the first three factors are business locality, flow of traffic, and connectivity. Next is parking. As I have told you that you should not set up your drugstore near the traffic signal, but at the same time the drugstore should be located in a place which is having a very high footfalls. So, we should see that there is enough parking space outside the drugstore. That is where the people who are coming to procure their medicines, they should be in a position to park their vehicles nearby. Now, in a city, there are certain restricted areas where parkings are generally not allowed, just to prevent the obstruction in the smooth traffic flow. So, those areas should be preferably avoided. This problem is not so much if it is located in a rural area where parking is very easily done, but in areas mainly particularly in the metro cities, this becomes a very important factors. Next is the geographical location of the drugstore should be such that preferably there should not be any competitor or any existing drugstore nearby where you are wanting to set up your new drugstore. The reason being, if the location is such where already 3 or 4 drugstores are already existing, there will be an unnecessary generation of competition which should be avoided. Therefore, if you want to make your sales high, try to set up your drugstore in an area where in the vicinity there are no drugstore. But at the same time, if it is near to the hospitals, if it is near to the clinics, or if it is near to the area where there are physicians, we can set up newer drugstore because that competition which already exists with the pre-existing drugstore will not affect your long run business, because the number of patients are more. So, you can set up an ideal location will be, it should be in a close proximity of the hospitals, clinicians and physicians present. These are very important. Never set up a drugstore which is near to a hotel or near to a restaurant or near to a seminar hall or near to school. We should try to avoid. The main objective why I am emphasizing this particular point is that we should not set it up near the restaurant is, it affects the it's a great problem to maintain the cleanliness of the area. Next is a very important factor which is about the availability of finance, because in most cases we require finance to set up the drugstore, and in many occasions we have seen that we are not having the necessary financial budgets which is required to set up a newer one. Therefore, availability of finance is one of the most important factor. Sufficient finance should be available to open the drugstore. Now, the other factors are the size of the plot. The area where you are establishing the new store, it should be such that if your business grows, if the sales volume grows, if your business flourish, there should be a scope for enlargement or expansion. The size of the plot must have sufficient scope for expansion. Now, whenever we are talking of expansion, we should keep in mind that it should be as per the municipal rules and regulations of the government, because in many areas government does not allow unnecessary expansion to take place. And lastly, certain essential service like post office, like bank, the warehouse, if they are located near the site, more and more people may come to your drugstore because they are visiting this post office or the bank for some other purpose, and at the same time they will be attracted towards your shop. Therefore, the shop can also be located in a place where there is a pre-existing location of a post office or a bank or the warehouse. Now, let us have a comparison between the urban area and the suburban area as far as the geographical location is concerned. In urban area, the advantages are there is a better transportation and communication facility. People can easily come and easily move out. There is better availability, better supply of skilled labor force. People are more educated, that is another advantage of this urban area. And as because they are more educated, so automatically they require a better health and medical service. So, you can easily float up your drugstore in that particular area. There should be a better scope of publicity, better technical, financial and commercial facilities are available in the urban area, and there is a better facility for repair and maintenance related works, because labor is available, materials are easily available. So, you can repair immediately if there is a problem. Say for example, if you are working and there is a problem regarding internet connectivity, because nowadays majority of the stores they are having an online procurement and data maintenance system, and in urban area it is very easily available. If there is a problem as far as internet is concerned, it can be immediately repaired. Now, let us have a picture on the other hand, that is about the semi-urban area. First, there is a greater scope of expansion which is not possible in the urban area. There is a lower rates of land, the rent is low, so automatically the profitability will be high. Next is there is no congestion and no overcrowding, because the area is such that the space is easily available. So, the overcrowding problem that can be avoided. Another advantage is the wage is low. See, the wage is low, the rate of land is low. So, automatically you are in a position to have greater profit, because whatever money you are investing, after getting all these expenditures deducted, you will be getting to your profit calculations. Next advantage is lower cost of living for the employees. The person whom you employ, they can have the facility to stay nearby at a lower cost. So, automatically their salary can be little bit lower down. Social benefits arising out of the distribution of the industries in the villages. This is another advantage as semi-urban areas are concerned. Now, let us see what are the disadvantages. Disadvantages are, in the urban area, there is a higher rate of land. The land becomes very costly. So, automatically the rent is higher. Higher municipal tax and various restrictions on the use of land. You are not in a position to expand freely. Higher cost of living, overcrowding, higher wages, and extension is really difficult and expensive, particularly if the area where you have set up is in the urban domain. Now, let us see what are the disadvantages as far as semi-urban areas are concerned. There is a restriction of the skilled labor force. So, if your instruments gets disrupted due to any reason, you will have time, you will require much more time, as because labor availability, skilled force availability is a problem. Difficulties in procurement of material due to the transportation problem. Lack of banking facility, because banks are always not located in a very close vicinity of your drugstore. Lack of educational facility, you require much greater effort to educate the customer, to educate the patients. And finally, lack of transport and communication facility is another great disadvantage if the drugstore is located in the semi-urban area. Now, the another thing which you need to keep in mind, that if your drugstore is located in the rural area, automatically there are large number of farmers, and as because there are large number of farmers, the owner of the drugstore or the pharmacist who is dealing with it must have this point in mind, that they are having certain restrictions in the buying capacity. Now, as because they are having restrictions in the buying capacity, you need to give these farmers, the low income group people, some credit facilities also, so that they will purchase the medicine today, but in due course of time they will make the payment. So, extension of credit facility needs to be there if your drugstore is located in the rural region. Now, objectives of layout of a drugstore. There are various objectives. Let us go one by one. First objective is to provide proper place and space for the drug. You should be having a plan so that the drug should be properly located, properly distributed in shelf, not muddled up one over the other. There should be an improvement outlook of the drugstore and attract maximum customers. This is a very, very important point. The outlook of the drugstore must be very good. That is, there should be a glass window, there should be a glass door, the walls should be polished properly, the floor should be clean, there should not be any cracks. That is, the outlook of the drugstore is very important. More better is the outlook, more people will be attracted to visit your store. To increase the sales of the drugstore, to minimize the movement of customer within the drug premises, we should set up the drugstore in such a way that people should not loiter here and there. There should be a reduction of pilferage, theft, and provide surveillance. Thus, closed circuit TV located in various parts will prevent this problem of unnecessary stealing of items. You should have a place for proper assigning, stock keeping, accounting, and for the office. There should be a proper ventilation and the store should be very well illuminated by LED lamps. Geographically, we should try to keep the drugstore in the ground floor, because the number of people who will be coming, who will be passing across the road, can see your drugstore and just enter inside. Now, whenever we are talking of storing this drug item, we should see that the fast moving item should be kept near the counter and slow moving item should be kept near the back of the shelf, so that the customers, when they are having a glimpse of it, they should not move the items here and there. Now, the cash counter, the wrapping counter should be near the entrance. The drugstore should be so constructed with proper tiles and cemented walls, so that there should not be any cracks, no leaking from the top, because majority of the drugs which we are using, they are sensitive to moisture. So, unnecessary water pilferage should be avoided. The walls should be smooth. The cupboard should be comprises of the glass doors and drawers which are used to store the strips of the drugs. The provisions of refrigerator should be there to preserve your vaccines and many pharmaceutical items which are thermolabile in nature. And the other furnitures include a small working table for the staff and the wooden or steel chairs where the staff and customers can sit. The other factors which are generally considered in the infrastructural factor I am talking of, there should be the required space should be in terms of the quantity, the time of receiving of the supply, the space required for each item, the length of stay, and the need of the cold storage. Now, in case of cold storage, if there is a large facility, we should have a separate cold room, otherwise a small refrigerator or a freezer can do. The location on design should ensure the maximum air circulation to avoid the concentration of gas or fumes. At the same time, there should be a proper drainage, so that water does not accumulate and it should not drip from the top. The roof should be so extended beyond the window, so that whenever there is a sunlight or whenever there is a rain, the water should not come inside. Now, the walls and floor, they should be permanent and smooth for easy cleaning. The floor should withstand the frequent movement of heavy products and equipments. The door should be wide enough to allow the customer to move inside. The door should also be wide enough, so that whenever the items are coming from the various warehouses, they should have easy entry. Provision of natural light should be there, while a fluorescence or incandescent bulb lighting should be avoided, as this emit the ultraviolet ray and heat, which has a negative effect on certain products. We should have the cupboard and shelf, we should be free from dust. Next, we are coming to the legal requirements. A presence of a pharmacist who is registered in any pharmacy council of the state is very much required. The minimum requirement for starting a legal drugstore, if it is a retail one, it is 150 square feet. On the other hand, if it is a wholesale one, it should be 200 square feet. This is the minimum requirement. You can keep above that, but this is the minimum one. And the other licenses which we need to procure are the Shop Act license, which is to be obtained from the district labor office, the insecticide and pesticide license, which should be taken off from any agricultural college. We should have a food license, mainly whenever we are selling various baby food items, honey and various health drinks like Bonvita and Viva. This is to be obtained from the FDA, and separate license should be there to produce the homeopathic drugs also. And the other store requirements which we should have is, there should be sufficient number of racks to store the drug and the pharmaceutical items. And I am emphasizing once again that majority of there are some pharmaceuticals, particularly of the antibiotic group, the penicillin, we have certain vitamins. Most of the vaccines and sera and enzymatic preparations which we need to sell it to the customer, we should store it in a refrigerator, keeping the temperature between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. This is mandatory. This is a layout of the design of a drugstore which we need to produce whenever we are going for application. This is a 10 by 15 square feet. This is the area from where the people can enter. This is a glass window display where we can display the major items. This is the waiting area. We are having a series of racks here. We are having a provision of a freezer just to protect your item. And here is a table and a chair and table for the working bench where the people can sit. Here there is a storage area. This is as far as the retail drugstore design is concerned, and whenever we are talking of the wholesale drugstore, this is the racks, this is the point where the patient enters. Here there is a rack, there is the presence of a freezer. The number of racks is more because the volume of drugs which is to be handled is more. Now, as far as organizing the supplies of drugs are concerned, the drugs should be stored in original containers, similar drugs to be kept in the same shelf, supplies to be arranged in the alphabetical order, items with short lives kept in the front, keep the expiry dates easily visible. This is very, very vital. Self-storing principle to be followed, top shelves generally for dry medicines, middle shelf for the liquid and injectable or ointment, and the bottom shelf for surgical items and laboratory supplies. Within each drug group, arrange they are in alphabetical order, store the items in groups, store medicines and supplies or expiry date mainly for the first expiry, first out, and keep all expiry items separated, identify the overstock items. Now, as far as the storage condition is concerned, whenever it is mentioned as store frozen, it should be at -20. When it is mentioned at keep cold, keep it between 2 to 8 degrees, keep cold, if the label package is mentioning as keep cool, keep it within 8 to 25 degrees Celsius. Whenever it is mentioned in the package as to be stored in room temperature, we should keep it at generally at 30 degrees. Avoid from moisture, it should be less than 60% humidity. All vaccines are to be stored between 8 to 28 degrees Celsius for long term storage. -20 degrees is used for BCG vaccine, oral spas vaccine, measles, mumps and rubella vaccines and also. So, quickly summing it up, drugstore management therefore is required to manage a drug house effectively. We have discussed with you the several factors which we need to consider both in terms of legal requirement, and we have shown you about the rough layout of the wholesale drug outlet as well as for the retail outlet which we need to supply, which we need to submit before applying for setting up of a drugstore. I hope with this you are in a position to get a sufficient idea of what you will be requiring whenever you are starting up the new business. Thank you very much.